you are into architecture, either as a passionate or as an architect wannabe, architecture photography is very useful to get the best of the visual experience of a building, because, for example, you realize properly how light is interacting with this object, and it helps you a lot if you want to design something influenced by this particular architecture, for example, or by using the same material. Or it's things that you see live. I think Louis Kahn said that architecture start to exist when the lights get on the building for the first time, basically.
Hi everyone, I'm really excited to interview Mr. Roberto. He's based in Italy and he's an architectural photographer, and he has published many articles in famous websites like Art Daily, Architectural Digest, and Design Boom. And I'm really excited for this interview session.
Architecture is really about traveling. You have to see Ronchamp by Le Corbusier. You can see how many photos you want, but you can get the project only when you walk in, when you sit on top of a hill. And so it, of course, studying and traveling helps a lot to correctly focus your mind about how to represent architecture.
If you can name one book or experience which had a great impact on your career, what would that be and how it shaped you?
Yeah, in general, I mean, I'm from near Milan, as you can see from the background, and I was as a lot of photographers, architecture photographer, not just in Italy, I was influenced a lot by the work of the photographer from Milan called Gabriele Basilico. He passed away a few years ago, and his work was really, really, really interesting to me. And I learned a lot looking at his pictures and reading his text. And for example, he realized a series about Milan factories in late 70s, early 80s. Milano Ritratti di Fabbriche, portraits of factories of Milan. And I was really influenced by his approach of studying, of exploring, and of his interpretation of cities and places. So I cannot really pick a single photo from his work, but this series was very, very, very important for me, as his whole work. I mean, he realized very, very intense pictures in Beirut soon after the end of the war, Istanbul, the northern coast of France, a lot of photos of harbors. So I think that we are all very lucky to have the possibility to check his the work, the masterpieces that you realize that this still influences so many photographers around. Yeah, and of course also because you have to know, it's very difficult for architecture photographer just walking around and stumbling upon an interesting architecture. In most cases, you have to locate using books, using Google Earth, using Google Maps, using websites or forums. You have to put together a lot of information. And me and a lot of other architecture photographer, we studied light beforehand. I mean, we try to understand the position, the orientation of a building according to the light, according to the season you're supposed to take photos, so that you know that, for example, before 1 p.m., especially in places with a very strong daylight like India, sometimes you cannot really take photos before one time or after one specific hour of the day. So you have to plan as much as you can in order to be more effective. and to go before, to get the results you want in the way you want. For example, the Salk Institute in La Jolla in San Diego by Cannes, you really get the importance of lights when you're there on sunset, for example. This is very, very unique place. I think there are two main, let's say, channels in my photographies. The first one is description. So my photos are about architecture. There's also the reason why the human presence in my photos is very limited, because it's very easy for human brain to make architecture the background if there is a human person in the foreground. But if I really want the architecture to be the subject of the photo, and so I'm trying to find the best points of view to describe the architecture. So there is, let's say, a descriptive part, and then there is the emotive part. From the other side, besides the description, what I like to do is trigger some emotion about surprise, about interest. It's not really about, I always say that I'm not really interested in ugly or beauty, ugliness or beauty of building. I'm interested in very nice Art Nouveau buildings as gray blocks. I don't care really if one is big. I really want to trigger about surprise, about how the majesty of the buildings can be attracted in the two dimensions of photography. I always think about it's impossible for a photography to give the real sense of the architecture. So for me, it's always, I'm really aware of the limits of this mean that is photography. Curious, basically. It's really the fuel to move forward, because if you are genuinely curious, you really want to go finding architectures, finding interesting places, and once you're there, you really want to get to that point of view, and this is really pushing you a lot to discover new places. All the rest come afterwards. I know it may sound not so original, but it's the only way, I think, to really survive, to be genuinely curious about what you're doing, especially in our field of architecture.